Donald Trump's worst nightmare is coming true as Republicans are joining Democrats to force the release of the Epstein files. Now, as you know, Donald Trump has been desperate to distract and hide the files and get us to talk about something else. But Democrats haven't been buying it, and neither has Republican Thomas Massie, who put forth a discharge petition to force the DOJ to release the files. And no Republican joined him until now. And Donald Trump is issuing a warning to every Republican saying, quote, helping Thomas Massie and liberal Democrats with their attention seeking while the DOJ is fully supporting a more comprehensive file release is a hostile act to the administration, unquote. Yeah, Donald Trump is running scared right now. Now, it should be noted, it's Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, and Marjorie Taylor Greene who have signed on so far. And this was as of last night, so more may have signed on. And this is exactly what Donald Trump was trying to avoid. But every distraction he put forth only made the story grow bigger. And now we are here. Buckle up.
Good morning. Today we're going to be hearing from some of the victims. And I want to remind everyone that they are just that, victims. They don't owe us anything. They don't owe us to be perfect. Some of these women were children when this happened to them, or very young women. Some of these women were already in very vulnerable situations, which is why they gained access to them. We owe them respect and compassion and to believe them. For some of you, it will be too hard to watch, and that's okay. You don't have to. I'll be watching, I'll be reporting what's coming next and what it all means. But the worst thing is that this is where we are. That up until now, our representatives could not come together and say that these men deserve to be held accountable. Because there's too many men and some women who'd rather hold on to their money and power than to help stop these men. But that ends today. And that ends because of us, because we will not stop asking to hold these men accountable.
So here we are, it's September 1st, and in 2 days, September 3rd, we're going to have 10 of Jeffrey Epstein's victims holding a press conference. They're going to be supported, lifted by Ro Khanna and other Democrats, giving them a voice. According to Ro Khanna, it's going to be very damning. I don't know what that means. What I do know is that every single Democratic House member is voting to have the Epstein files released in their entirety, along with these 10 victims who are going to be urging the White House to release the files so everybody can see everything. And all they need are 6 Republicans to sign on to pass this resolution or whatever it's called. Just 6. And here we are. This entire cult that was birthed off of the Epstein conspiracies, painting the Democrats as the edophiles. And here we are. It was projection at its best. It was all kinds of bad players who knew what the Republicans were doing, what the likes of Donald Trump and others were doing, and they turned around and created a whole fantastical story that it was the Democrats that were behind it. And here we are today, every single Democrat wanting those files released. Will we get 6 Republicans? Will we? What is this going to say to the rest of the world that not one Republican, let alone 6, is going to get on board to release these files? Just crazy. I can't believe we're in this fucking timeline.
If I said the names Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace, you would think I'm naming some of the worst people in Congress in no particular order. But actually, those are the only 3 names that are joining Thomas Massie in a petition to force a vote to release the files. And right now, Trump and his White House are blocking that measure. They're absolutely stonewalling it and saying any Republican who jumps on this, signs this petition to force a vote on the release of the files is basically a hostile act. They're acting in a hostile manner and they will be targeted essentially. If there are no files or there's no issue, Donald Trump's not in the files, then why are they coming after Thomas Massie in this petition so hard? There's also saying, oh, this is a repetitive measure. We already have something like this on the floor and this makes no difference. Then why is the White House, why is Donald Trump, why is the DOJ coming after these Republicans in Congress and threatening them? They are being threatened. So somehow the three worst members of Congress are the three of the ones that are sticking their necks out on this and actually fighting for the truth. I find myself aligned with these people very, very, very infrequently. Basically this one time. But yes, I agree. Sign the petition. Release the files. This is absolute bullshit. And what Donald Trump and his White House are doing right now is nothing short of a cover-up.
So now that Dumpy made his proof of life video for everybody, his failures continue. Because while he showed up just to tell everybody that rumors about his death were fake news and he's in perfect health, he's still sporting a bruised hand covered in makeup. Which, by the way, is not from shaking hands like he likes to say. Because when you shake somebody's hand, you don't crush the back of their hand. If anything, you would get bruises right here and under here. Having a bruise on the back of your hand from shaking hands makes no fucking sense. But also every single president before him, including Biden, was shaking hands with people, and they didn't bruise. That's because it's from an IV. But I have a video that I'm going to release later showing my further thoughts on that bizarre interview. But as Trump continues to jones for a Nobel Peace Prize, having anyone he interacts with or anyone in his party nominate him for one, he recently wanted one because of the talks he was having between Zelensky and Putin, even though he has not only since abandoned those talks, but even he has pretty much admitted, yeah, it was a dud, nothing came from it. That's not going to get you a Peace Prize, pal. But a federal appeals court today ruled that he illegally used the Alien Enemies Act to deport people. So of course he's now going to try sending it to the Supreme Court. But after he's been rebuked several times already, he's got a really steep hill to climb there. For example, one of the judges on that appeals court panel issued a 131-page dissent. Nobody in the federal judicial system thinks that him doing this was okay. And so far, even the Supreme Court has ruled against him when it comes to deportations. And the most specific part about this that I think is important is that Trump loses all the time. The only way he attempts to win is in the court of public opinion, by getting in front of cameras and lying his ass off. And yesterday was the first time he was physically able to do that in a week. And as his health continues to decline, he's going to have less and less time in front of the cameras. That's less time that his followers get subjected to his horseshit. And that is going to cause all of the garbage being pushed by the MAGA to start losing steam.
Remember how Mike Johnson dismissed Congress early rather than let them vote for a discharge petition brought by Representatives Thomas Massie, who is a right-wing conservative, and Representative Ro Khanna, who's a Democrat, basically demanding the release of the Epstein files? Pepperidge Farm remembers. And guess who's back in session? So Thomas Massie has filed that discharge petition. He held a press conference. There's a piece of video I want you guys to see. Now he has to get, I believe, 218 congressional signatures for it. So write your representatives, call them, tag them on the other site. I did that too. The interesting news that has come out today is basically the Republicans are putting forward this bill that's like, it doesn't do anything. It's basically like, they want them to continue the investigation. It's a nothing. It's a nothing. And so they're trying to say, well, we're doing this, so we don't need to do Thomas Massie's thing. And they're trying to say it's redundant. What Thomas Massie's doing is redundant to what they're doing, but it's not. And the interesting news that came out today is that the White House is calling and whipping votes against Thomas Massie's resolution. So if it was so redundant, if it was so unnecessary, like, what does it matter? Why are you working so hard to fight against it? And check this video out.
Well, the question is, why are they doing a pressure campaign? Why are they doing that? Why do they? Because they don't want the files released. Look, if my legislation were redundant, why would the White House be trying to stop it? It's not redundant. There are things that the White House doesn't want out there that my legislation would cause to be released.
Tomorrow, Jeffrey Epstein's victims will be holding a press conference But today they had a roundtable discussion with both Democrats and Republicans of the House Oversight Committee. I want to show you this one clip of Melanie Stansberry. You can see how shaken she is and how affected she is by the stories that she was told. She also refers to Trump in about the 2-minute and 20-second mark. Here's how it went.
I want to say that I'm truly stunned by what I heard today. The thing about being a victim of assault, of sexual violence, is that it not only steals your sense of self, it steals your dignity, it steals your ambition, it steals your hopes, it steals your dreams, and it steals your sense of personhood. And what we heard today is from a half dozen victims, some of whom have already pursued both civil and criminal suits against both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as from several who have never told their stories in public before. But before I turn to the substance of the case itself, I want to say to anyone out there who is currently experiencing abuse of any kind, we see you. We are here fighting for you, and we will fight for justice for every person who is experiencing sexual violence in this country, and that is what this case is actually about. But I want to be clear that what we heard today is a cover-up, and it is a cover-up of epic proportions, a cover-up involving the United States government, the justice system, rich and powerful individuals, a cover-up potentially involving foreign countries and foreign actors. And yes, here today in this House, as our colleagues are up in the House chamber in the Rules Committee, a cover-up by the Republicans in this chamber. Because as you will find out in the coming days and weeks, this goes all the way to the top. So let's be clear about that. There has been a systemic failure of the justice system for decades. A systemic failure to hold people who are powerful and have money to account, and that has allowed not just hundreds but potentially thousands of women, not only in the United States but around the world, to be bought, sold, and trafficked for sex, not only by Jeffrey Epstein but by his associates and his rich and powerful friends. And as these stories come forward, whether they're stories that have already been told, they're stories in those FBI files that have not been released by the Department of Justice and which they must release because of the subpoena, or whether they are stories of victims that have not yet come forward, we will hold you all accountable for this miscarriage of justice, for the abuse of these women and the abuse of this institution to try to cover it up, because there happens to be a very powerful person at the top who doesn't want these stories out. So that is why we subpoenaed these records. That is why these victims were here today to bravely tell their stories. And whatever justice looks like in the coming days and weeks and years, we will follow every thread. We will follow every piece of evidence. We will follow every bank record. We will follow every investigation. We will follow every court order, and we will make sure that those who were abused by these men are held accountable.
Well, hi, good morning. Let's take a look at Donald Trump's lies again. All right, here we go. Early this morning, at least 54 people were shot in Chicago over the weekend. 8 people were killed. The last 2 weekends were similar. Chicago is the worst and most dangerous city in the world by far. Remember that. Pritzker needs help badly. He just doesn't know it yet. I will solve the crime problem fast, just like I did in D.C. Chicago will be safe again and soon. Make America great again. Well, Donnie, I looked up that fact, and it's not even in the top 20 most dangerous cities in the world. Actually, the only one, hang on, there's a second page. The only one to make the top 20 list is St. Louis, Missouri. This is just a reminder that Donald Trump makes up statistics and facts to fit his narrative. He wants to do things, so he makes things up, says that, crime is out of control and that local government can't handle it, which is not true. He is sending the National Guard into cities where they don't belong. They don't need to be there. They have not been requested. He just lies. He says Chicago is the worst, most dangerous city in the world by far. And it doesn't even crack the top 20. The con man in chief.
I'm about to play you two videos of two different reps that were sitting in the House chamber yesterday listening to the victims of Jeffrey E.
Cover-up of this capacity to have allowed for the abuse of over 1,000 women over the course of decades, and then stories that demonstrate that Epstein and others were able to perpetuate the abuse beyond, even after the public knew. We know there's a lot more to this. And I think that this is the most corrupt administration in American history, and this story shows it more than anything. So
what we heard today is a cover-up, and it is a cover-up of epic proportions, a cover-up involving the United States government, the justice system, rich and powerful individuals, a cover-up potentially involving foreign countries and foreign actors. And yes, here today in this House, as our colleagues are up in the House chamber in the Rules Committee, a cover-up by the Republicans in this chamber. Because as you will find out in the coming days and weeks, this goes all the way to the top.
These two women just confirmed what we have all thought for months. This administration has been throwing things out about the files, and the pieces just have not been adding up. It will be interesting to see what happens after today, September 3rd, when the victims have a public press conference. As you may or may not know, Ro Khanna and Massey have a bill right now that they are trying to pass. They just need the signatures, but it is to give us, the American people, the files unredacted as they are, so that we can see what is truly inside of them. Full transparency. And I will keep you guys updated on how that goes today on Capitol Hill.
So here's a deeply ironic story happening right now off the coast of Rhode Island. You could call it leopards are eating my face fisherman's version. So you may have heard that last week Trump ordered a stop to a massive offshore wind farm project called Revolution Wind. This project was 80% completed and he just killed it, citing national security. But here's where it gets interesting. Fishermen in the area, all of whom voted for Trump, are absolutely furious about it. You may ask, why are they mad? Is it because they care about climate change and they want to see solutions? No, nothing like that. These are super classic Trump supporters. They literally fly flags like this on their fishing boats. But here's the thing. They have been making serious money working on this wind project. We're talking $100,000 extra per year for some of these guys. One fisherman said his crew went from making $30,000 to middle-class wages. And that's why these Trump voters are calling it madness and begging him to reverse course. One guy said, it's like having the rug pulled out from under you. Nobody understands why Trump did it. What these men do understand, though, is that they are sitting at the docks with no pay while their nearly finished project sits frozen. And here's the final irony. Fishing has gotten so tough with climate change and overfishing that wind farm work became some fishermen's lifeline. And now the president they voted for is pulling that lifeline away, not just in Rhode Island, but everywhere. Looks like the real madness was voting for Trump and thinking he'd help anybody but himself.
Okay, I've got a really big announcement, and it's the one that a lot of us have been waiting for. Indivisible has announced that No King's Day 2 will be held on October 18th, 2025. So mark your calendar, set aside that day. Also, make sure that you go to nokings.org and sign up to get the emails. That way you learn about the planning stages, the themes, you learn about where events are being hosted all around the United States and all around the world. The original No King's Day on June 14th of this year had more than 2,000 events. I think it was something like 2,200 plus by the end of the day. Not just in the United States, also in Mexico, Canada, around Europe, Australia. People were standing up in solidarity with the American people who are fighting against the fascist regime of Donald Trump. The theme, the messaging of the first No Kings Day was obviously, this is America, we have no kings here. It should be abundantly clear to everybody now that Donald Trump is desperate to install himself as a king, as a dictator.
They say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator.
Nobody is saying that. Absolutely nobody is saying that. What we're saying is that we want an America that is of, by, and for the people. We fought a whole damn war to get ourselves free of the tyranny of a king. We will not be quietly handing over our rights and our country and our Constitution and our neighbors to a sad, petty, frail, aging, narcissistic dictator who is grifting off the American people and our tax dollars and would love nothing better than to install himself as a little Caesar here in the United States of America. We have no intention of handing over our democracy to a group of white nationalist Christo-fascists who want to use Donald Trump to turn this country into a theocracy. We have no intention of handing over our democracy to a bunch of dark enlightenment billionaire tech bros who think that they're going to turn the United States into, their little feudal fiefdoms, where they think that they are all going to be little mini kings after Donald Trump kicks it. We will not be handing over our country to any of those chuckle fucks. So how does No King's Day 2 fit into that? Right? Because I get people in my comments all the time who are like, Angela, No King's Day 1 didn't stop it. We had the largest single day of protest in the history of the United States of America. And the fascists just, they didn't give up. They didn't say, oh gosh, look at all these millions of people in the streets. We better quit now. After No King's Day, we had a number of terribly fallacious takes about the protest itself. People saying, well, because the fascists didn't lay down their swords and run away screaming because we turned out in the streets in the millions and millions all over the country, around the world, that must mean protests don't work. And I realize for most of us in the United States, we've never had to fight fascism before. We've never had to do this before. And we're learning as we go. And people are correcting some of their misapprehensions as they go. We are all acquiring not only more skills every time we show up for community events and participate in grassroots organizing, we're also collecting more information. We're building our knowledge. We're all having to become experts on this very, very quickly. And I think one of the misconceptions that people had about No King's Day was they heard about this 3.5% rule from Dr. Erica Chenoweth, which I have talked up a lot. Unfortunately, like many things on social media, people hear a little blurb and they don't necessarily understand the full context, right? It's so hard in a 30 or 60 second video to understand the whole depth and breadth of an issue, right? When you're just having that headline being spat at you, you don't really learn all of the context and all of the nuance and all of the details. And it's really incumbent upon all of us to then go do our due diligence, do some additional investigating, right? And there's plenty of places to get additional training and support. It's one of the reasons I talk Congresswoman Jayapal's Resistance Labs training, which are online. And also Indivisible has the 1 Million Rising training series, which is 3 sessions. All free, all online, lots of skill building, lots of knowledge building. Also good to be following historians like Heather Cox Richardson, Tad Starmer, because there's lots of lessons of history that apply here. Now, I'm a big fan of Dr. Chenoweth's work. Their website is wagingnonviolence.org, because I'm a big proponent of nonviolent resistance. And they have this 3.5% rule, and it's a way to try and encapsulate, capture people's attention and kind of encapsulate what it means to have effective nonviolent resistance. Because I think, for a lot of us when we were going into this, we didn't really understand how many people does it take to topple fascism. And I think it can be really daunting, really scary to presume it takes every single person. How are we going to coordinate 340 million people or even half of the population? What a huge lift. How can we do that? So Dr. Chenoweth's work is really corrective of our misconception and also really encouraging. Their work says that if you look at historical resistance movements, if you look at what it takes to topple authoritarian regimes or to stop them from fully cementing themselves in the first place, it takes 3.5% of the population engaged in sustained resistance. And then also people behind the scenes supporting them. And I think a lot of people took that as a magic number. If 12 million Americans turn up in the streets on a Saturday, that we've reached that magic 3.5% threshold and the fascists will just up and quit. And that was never what Dr. Chenoweth's work was about. That's never what they represented. And so I think it's important to understand that a single day of protest is not going to stop this. That doesn't mean it's not a really important part of the multi-tiered, complex diversity of tactics that we need to be employing to stop the fascists. It's not about 3.5% of the population showing up on a single day. It's about 3.5% of the population or more engaged in strategic, consistent resistance. Like, we are dug in like a tick. There is no way we are going to back off and roll over for the fascists. It means that 3.5+% of the population are consistently finding ways to push back, to refuse to obey, to refuse to bend the knee, and then also to work to undermine the pillars of support that hold up the regime. It's saying, I look at my day, I look at what's ahead of me, I look at my interactions, I look at the places where I have leverage, and I think, how can I use every aspect of my life, no matter how small, no matter how large, whether it's a conversation with somebody at the grocery store, whether it's contacting my alumni organization, whether it's contacting my elected officials, whether it's engaging in mutual aid, whether it's a boycott, a strike, a blackout, whether it's civil disobedience or other direct actions that are far more disruptive. Am I part of the 3.5% of the population that is consistently looking at everything in my life through the lens of resistance and figuring out how to apply pressure to the regime and the supporters of the regime, while at the same time caring for those that are targeted by the regime? That's what the 3.5% rule means, y'all. So how do we get 3.5% of the population to engage in that work, to invest in that work? We have to bring them in. We have to draw them into this work. And the entry point for most people is events like No King's Day. No King's Day is all about recruitment. It's all about saying, hey, this is accessible for you. Maybe this work feels really daunting and really radical. Maybe you have never done anything like this before. Start here. This is a good, safe place to start. You will be supported. You will be welcomed. This is a small lift for you. It will be a positive experience. You will feel empowered. You will connect with other people. We'll get you signed up with your local Indivisible chapter or your local Surge chapter, 5051, ACLU. We'll connect you with people so that you can start to build those connections and build those skills and learn what is going to actually be required of you and everybody else around you in order to stop this. If we need 3.5% of the population engaged in sustained resistance, we have to have conduits to draw people into that resistance work. We have to be able to recruit folks. That's what these protests are about. Secondarily, these protests are about morale boosting. It is more crucial than ever. The more this regime clamps down, the more we need to maintain our hope and our focus, the more we have got to remind ourselves of why it is so worthwhile to keep defending each other, defending democracy, protecting the future for our children. We cannot let the messaging of the regime, the tactics of the regime, demoralize us. And I have personally found the single best thing that I can do to keep my morale high, keep myself very motivated, is to show up to local grassroots events, connect with other people in real time, meet new people, have conversations with folks, develop relationships, and be surrounded by maybe it's huge amounts of people. Maybe it's an event where there's 20, 30 people there, but I'm surrounded by other people who care about democracy, who care about loving and protecting their neighbors as much as I do. It's messy and imperfect, but there is no substitute for showing up to events like this to give you that boost, to give you that motivation, to try the next thing, to level up. Also, events like No King's Day are a very visible public demonstration to all of the pillars of support under the regime. Hey, what you're doing is not popular. Millions of people are standing in opposition. Your days are numbered. When the post-Trump era comes, you will have to answer to all of us. If you defect now, maybe it won't go as rough for you in the days to come. So anyway, 18th of October, 2025, mark your calendars, No King's Day 2. Sign up, make sure you get the information to come, make sure your local Indivisible chapter is plugged in and planning an event. Join your local Indivisible chapter and help plan an event. We need all hands on deck, October 18th.